$100, not ideal, to the point where we bought our house, our $200,000. And so I've always thought about managing my finances kind of like you run a business. So I do keep three main reports for our personal finances. I do a net worth tracker, a budget or income and expense report, and a cash manager. So like a cash flow. So these are the three reports that that are really important when you have a business. So that's kind of where this came from. It was around the same time that I switched to my degree in accounting when I started tracking my cash. Now, if you're familiar with accounting, you will see that this is not exactly a cash flow statement like you traditionally would see, but I think it's really helpful for answering a couple of questions. So those questions are, how much cash do I have? How much spendable money do I have? So not just looking at our bank balances, but also, the actual amount that you could spend. And then the other reason it's nice to have this is to give a purpose to all of the dollars that you've saved. So this is a popular idea with budgeting, where you take your income and you give every dollar a job. I think that this is a Dave Ramsey principle. But you would take your income and you list out all of your spending, and you get to zero at the bottom because you are assigning a purpose for every dollar that you have, whether that is going to pay off debt or if it's going to savings, whatever purpose you have behind it, just filling it in so that you get down essentially to zero at the bottom. So we're going to do the same thing with the cash flow tracker. Is we're going to take the amount of money that you currently have and then subtract off all of the purpose and intention behind that money. So it's going to be like emergency funds and sinking funds, for example. Hello. Okay, Brandon Boy 09, welcome. Thank you for hopping on the live stream. Mandaraj, how are you? Mandaraj says hello. Good evening. Zero-based budget. Oh, okay. So yes, Brandon, zero-based budgeting. Yes, exactly. So it's very similar to that, but just instead of it being your income for the month, we're looking at your cash in your, checking and savings accounts. So essentially money that you've set aside before the start of the month. Andrew's here, welcome. Yeah, it's from Dave Ramsey and the Money Guy Show. Okay, thank you. So if you're just hopping on, we're going to do how to manage cash today. I'm going to share my cash management tracker, essentially that I used and have continued to use since I was broke and unemployed. And I really think that this piece is kind of missing from most personal finance tracking. I have seen people do budgets that kind of account for this as well. So there's different ways to manage it, not to say that any are correct or incorrect. It's always worked really well for me. I hope it's helpful to you guys as well. And I should mention that when I'm talking about cash, I'm talking about cash from an accounting standpoint. So that is anything in your checking account, anything in your savings account, any CDs that you might have. And it does also include paper cash or paper money that you have. Okay, hello. Okay, I don't know how to say this. Ikra7com. Okay, I saw your comment on one of my other videos, so welcome. I don't know that I've seen you in a live stream, so welcome. We have a few new people. We are going to do our regular 3 5-minute silent work sessions. We will regroup after each one, discuss what we worked on. Feel free to ask questions as we go in the comments. I'll try to answer them. If not, we will do a Q&A session at the end. And then it's okay if you already have things that you want to work on during the silent work sessions. But if you want to follow along with the prompts that I'll be doing, the first one is going to be filling out a simplified tracker. The second is going to be separating out wants versus needs into 2 different sections. And then the third silent work session is going to be getting to zero. So what to do if you get to the bottom of your cash tracker and it's negative, and what to do if you get to the bottom of your cash tracker and it's a positive number. Because like I said, we're essentially going to account for every dollar that you have and kind of give it a purpose. And then Verna, if you're on, say hello. Last time Verna requested kind of an update on reading. So I'm reading right now Quit Like a Millionaire by Christy Shen and Bryce Leung. And so I'll mention a tip or two from that at the end. And then, like I said, Q&A section. So what you should know before we get into the example here is this report is going to answer the questions, how much spendable money do I actually have? And it's going to say, how aggressively do I need to save for my financial goals? I kind of have two different modes, essentially, when I'm saving for something. I have like my emergency savings mode. And so that's like my really extreme, cut everything down to just needs only. And that's what I used essentially to save my first $950 emergency fund. And then I kind of turned that on and off as my emergency fund grew to hit new thresholds. And this is the spreadsheet that I used to do that. So I'll show you, kind of how I adjusted that up as I went. A couple of assumptions here with this spreadsheet. I know not everyone agrees with keeping a lot of money in cash. For me personally, it's kind of been my answer to kind of the struggles I've had with money. Not having enough money, throw money at the problem. And just having more money on hand took away a lot of the stress that I was dealing with. So some of the assumptions for this spreadsheet are I should have enough money to cover my next 3 months of expenses. And not necessarily 3 months of expenses, but it's going to be the random things that happen over the next 3 months that are unusual, kind of big things that I need to save up for. And then just making sure that I'm not spending my emergency funds. That's important. And then the other one is I try to always be 1 month ahead. So it will have a section specifically for being 1 month ahead. And certainly you can tweak this to whatever your financial goals are. I have my 5 different types of emergency funds. Each of those would be a line item on here. And I'll get into that in a second. And then I did mention giving every dollar a purpose, and we're going to try to get this down to 0. Okay, I've talked enough. Let's look at the spreadsheet. Okay, so here is my cash management tracker. Let's go through a little example here. So each column is a different date, and this is where it differs a little bit from budgeting, is you can just do a snapshot at any particular day. It does not cover a range. Like when you're budgeting, you're maybe looking at the month of August. So for this whole month, here's my incoming and outgoing expenses. This is really just a snapshot, a picture in time of, okay, here's how much money I have, and here's what that money's for. So you can do it any day of the month. You can do it monthly. When I first started doing this, I really just did it quarterly. And then, I would look at how much money I needed to have. And then I could just automatically subtract that off of my bank balance each month. So that way I always knew, how much money I needed to have in my checking account and, how much was truly spendable. So if you were filling out today, for example, you'd have 8-4. Oh, we have a few additional people. Hello, Sabrina. Cash envelope gang. Definitely, yeah. So I haven't done cash envelopes before. That's something I've always wanted to try, but definitely you could have a line item in here for, your cash envelope system. So welcome. Lakeisha, hi, hey, beautiful people. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining. Okay, so going on to the different sections of my cash management tracker. So the first part is answering the question, how much money do I have? So I might say, okay, in my Wells Fargo checking account, let's say I have $1,500. Oh, that's supposed to say Wells Fargo saving. I just typed this up right before, so Wells Fargo saving, let's say you have 500 in there. And then paper cash, let's say you have 100. And like I said, this is cash from an accounting perspective. So any checking, savings, paper cash, CDs would be included on here as well. These are considered to be liquid assets. So essentially money that you have available that you could access. The next section is going to be emergency funds. Now I have a whole playlist on emergency funds going through the 5 different types that I have and kind of how to determine how much to keep in each. So I would say, okay, for my death fund, the very first one I started with was my death fund at $950. And now I do have a note section over here, which is helpful for putting in kind of your goals for what you want to have for each. So I just mentioned on the side here that this 950 was my estimation of how much I would need if I had to go to Seattle for an emergency trip. You might have a job loss fund. Typically, I do that as 3 to 6 months of expenses. And I don't think you can see it on here, but 1 month of expenses is about $2,000. So I do consider tracking my finances to be kind of a different component. So I don't include on here like a tally of how much I've spent, but you do kind of need to know that information, both for setting your emergency funds if you're going to do the 3 to 6 months emergency fund, and then also to know how much money you want to have set aside to have your 1 month ahead. So since in this example, I said 1 month of expenses is about $2,000, I would add that there. And then the next section would be upcoming cash needs. So this is where you want to put anything out of the usual that's coming up in the next 3 months, for example. As I grew the amount of cash that I had and started making progress on financial goals, I did extend this to be about 6 months. So this is one of the assumptions of this spreadsheet as well, is that I want to have the cash on hand now for those big things that are coming up, just so that I'm ready to go and don't have to stress out about those expenses as they pop up. The example that I have on here would be our property taxes. And in the notes, I put $1,600 every 6 months, next payment due in November. August, September, October. Okay, so technically I wouldn't have this on, every 6 months. So I would have about 6 months worth that I would need to have saved as of August. Okay, I'm bad at math. You go 1,600 divided by 6 times, 4 months in? So that's how much money I would essentially need to have if I was going to be on track to have the money by that time frame. And you can really do it either way. You can do like I just did and figure out the percentage that you want to have as of now. This is good with really big goals like buying a house if you are saving up for a down payment on a property. And or you could say, okay, I want to have if it's within the next 3 months, then, you might have the total amount on here. Oh, okay, I need to have the full 1,600 as of right now. Excuse me. Okay, and that gives us the total at the bottom, which is spendable money. Now you'll see on here it's negative. In this example, negative $2,450. So negative amounts mean that I need to continue saving to hit my goals. A little later on, I'll get into kind of those 2 different modes that I have of like my serious emergency savings mode where I don't have enough to cover these things that I kind of have set a standard for myself that I need to have money for, versus kind of like savings light when I have some things that goals that I have that I'm saving up for that aren't necessities. So that would be things like saving up for my next vehicle or buying an expensive pair of boots. It can be as small or big as you would like. Really, you want to capture anything on here that you can't pay for out of your regular monthly income. So that's going to be things that are like, you know, if you pay your car insurance on an annual basis, that would absolutely be something that you would want to include on here. And this is sinking funds. Like I think Ikra, was that your name? I think you mentioned that. Oh, maybe not. Zero-based budgeting. Anyway, so this is essentially where I track my sinking funds after I save that money. So on your budget, you might have your income and your expenses, and it would say on there, sending $500 to my sinking fund for Christmas, for example. So where does that money go after the end of the month? Well, essentially, you would then have an additional $500 in your checking account by the end of that month. And that would be set aside then for Christmas or holiday spending. Hopefully that makes sense. So this is kind of the end result of setting money aside from your budget for future expenses. Okay. Ikra says, I'm not American, but am creating a blog about saving money and I have questions. Too many. Oh, don't we all? It's so amazing to me how everybody budgets differently and there's a lot of different systems that you can follow. And so yeah, welcome again. Okay, so what are we talking about? We did the next three things: emergency funds, actual cash on top. Okay, so prep for work session 1. So you can, like I said, you feel free to work on whatever financial tasks you have. A lot of people will work on their side hustle during the silent work sessions. Now might also be a good time to do an August budget if you haven't done one yet. I wouldn't worry about it. We're 4 days in, so there have been times where I've done a budget on like the 15th of the month. Better late than never. Or you can feel free to go ahead and take a stab at the cash management tracker. Now, I did include a link to this in the description to the video, so you can pull up this spreadsheet and look at it while we're doing the work session. And yeah, feel free to ask questions in the comments as we go. Let me go ahead and pull up the first one, pull up the timer, and let's get into it. Okay, work session 1, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. End of work session 1. How did it go? Okay, we got some comments on here. Let's look at those. Pause my ticker, my screen, and why? Okay, so Ikra, why is it hard to save money in the USA? Is it salary or credit cards? Ooh, good question. Probably both. Just based on talking to like my personal finance coaching clients, I think they would agree it's both. Issues with salaries being pretty low, as well as like credit card debt is very common. I think a lot of people struggle with that. Good question. Feel free to reply if anyone else has ideas on that. I think it would probably be both. Sabrina, I had 20 sinking funds, and recently, since I saw your video about your different emergency funds, added on another one for the funeral. I live in the Dominican Republic, and the exchange of our money is low. Okay, yeah. I'm glad that helped. I'm glad that was helpful. Yeah, I think it's important to have really specific reasons behind all of the money that you're saving. And that's partially why I like this cash flow management tracker so much, is because you really see the money that you have saved, and you can really see why you've saved it. Instead of just having a bank account with, money in it and saying, oh, okay, some of this is savings and some of this is money that I can freely spend. And I want to talk about this too. Okay, so I actually had one account from the time that I had $200 to the point where we had our full house, so $200,000. And I think that having one account really helped me with discipline. I call it the one account to rule them all, just to make it a little easier to manage money. I didn't hear that tip anywhere. That was just, I had one. It didn't even occur to me to have more than one, really. So if you have 20 sinking funds, you would want to have a line for each of those in here, because you would add up all of the money, any sinking funds that you have. If they're in different accounts, you would want to add up all your accounts here so that you can see the full total of how much money you have available. So that does get a little tricky. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I should probably elaborate on that more. Sabrina also says, I have lots of family members in family members in the USA, so I thought it was a good idea to have that. Yeah, I know I get nervous, and I want to have costs to cover my funeral so that family doesn't have to pay, is essentially why I feel strongly about it. Why is it necessary to have different emergency funds and different accounts? So I don't know that they necessarily need to be in different accounts. So that's why I was saying I just had one account, my one checking account for the longest time. But I did still have them itemized out into these different funds. So these are the 5 different funds that I like to keep. And I think it's important to have some kind of separation on them, just because it helps you to save that money. I have a problem with having arbitrary emergency funds. So, if you just say, oh, okay, I need to have $1,000, well, that doesn't really mean anything to me. It's not the same as saying, okay, I need to have $950 because that's the scenario that I think is most likely to occur to me that I want to have money set aside for. I think having these different funds helps me not only to save them, but also to keep them, because if you have a specific reason and like a strong, powerful why statement behind that money, then that's going to pop into your head if you think about spending it for something that you hadn't previously said that you were going to spend that money on. So for me, it's kind of just like a discipline to have them separated into different ones. And like I said, these could all be in the same account. It's just knowing that that $950 is for the death fund. That $6,000 is for the job loss fund. So that's why I like to have different. And, certainly, like I said, everyone does it differently. So ICRA, I watched a lot of US videos to learn how to manage money, and I even read a lot of books. Books are a great way to learn about finance. I did manage to pay off my debts, yay, and still only a tiny portion that I'm not planning to pay off soon because of the pandemic. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of people that are kind of just holding on to cash for the time being, and I think that's smart. And nothing is to say that you can't, in a few months, once you have saved up some money, then decide that you feel, good about, using that money to pay off the rest of your debt. So yeah, I think that that's a really good strategy. Thank you guys for commenting, so active today. I appreciate you. Okay, so prepping for work session 2. So separating into wants and needs. So I add a goals section. So I just hit it for the time being. So I really like to separate my wants versus needs because this is how I establish like the standard for my finances. That very first time I said, okay, I'm never going to have less than $950 ever again. I decided that I just wasn't going to do it, that's not an option anymore. So this is kind of how I outlined that. I had kind of my needs for my finances. So this is the money I expect myself to always have. And then I have a section for kind of my goals and wants, the things that are upcoming that I want to be saving for. So this is where I would account for vacations. I know not many of us are going on vacations right now. But yeah, where do you guys want to go? Mexico, how about Mexico? So you say Mexico trip, and then in the comments, you want to, or notes section, you'd want to estimate how much that trip is going to cost. And I do look at the average cost per day of whatever place I'm going to visit. So I'll go out to Google and literally Google Oaxaca, Mexico, average cost per day for, travel. And a lot of the times you can get pretty good estimates on the internet about how much it costs to go somewhere. Then of course, you'd want to estimate the cost for a flight and hotel if it wasn't included in the average cost. It will usually tell you what it includes. So let's say it's going to be $3,000 needed by 20. Oh, okay. Well, this is money that you need to have for the next 3 months. So by end of quarter, we'll say that. So that would be Mexico trip. Other things that you would want to account for in your goals section would be, like if you are saving up for a new vehicle or holidays. So I know I had that example before in the upcoming cash needs, but I would say holidays down here as well. Okay, so now that we're at the bottom of the spreadsheet, this is where, okay, let me think here. So you could say you'd want, okay, $3,000 by the end of the quarter. So that means, since one of the assumptions of the spreadsheet is I want to have the money now for the next 3 months, you could say, okay, I'd like to have $3,000 now. And there's, like I said, there's 2 ways to do it. You could say $1,000 since you have 2 more months in the quarter to save that money, or you can say, I want to have the money up front, $3,000. The nice thing about this, especially with goals, is you get to decide what's important to you and what you want to prioritize. So I'd go through and I'd say, okay, and I want to have $500 for the holidays. Okay, so we have a little bit of everything filled out in here now. So we come down to the bottom and it says spendable money is negative $11,950. So this is where I think that this spreadsheet is so incredibly helpful. Getting to see a negative on here just changes your psychology when it comes to spending money. Seeing negatives on here helps me to spend less because I know that I need to save $11,950 in order to accomplish these things that I want to have accomplished. So that's the first pass. The first pass, I go through it and I fill out everything that I want and need to have. Now, I would go through this one more time if it's negative and figure out how much I'm actually under for the goals that I have. So if I'm $11,000 under, I'm just going to have to take this Mexico trip and zero it out for now. It becomes like trying to get to zero. And, you know, a lot of the times when you're first starting out, it's hard to get to that point. But essentially, you want to say, okay, I actually, you know, in my checking accounts, oh gosh, I can't see my sum total. Oh, my spreadsheet's pulled down. Okay, $2,100 is how much I have in checking and savings. So I don't have enough to hit all my goals. So I'm just going to go through and say, okay, what am I actually going to do with this 2,100? So we're going to leave the 950 for that. And then I think we're going to have to zero these out. And it's just like a budget. You just want to get down to zero. So you have 1150. Okay. Did I go through that too quickly? So you go through it one time. If you have a positive number at the end, I would add new goals. So a positive number of spendable money means I have enough money on hand to cover the expenses that I said I want to be able to cover. So that's when you could add another trip. You could say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to, you know, maybe do a Europe trip as well. You could say, oh, okay, I'm going to give this money and put in charitable giving and do a donation to somebody. Give a donation to somebody, do a donation. Or you could, you know, save ahead for other items that you want and need. So just to recap, you fill it out one time. If it's negative, you go back through and decide, okay, what am I actually going to do with the dollars that I have because I came up short? If you are positive at the bottom, then you want to go in and add goals. You're trying to leave this spreadsheet at zero because once again, that goes to the psychology of, okay, how much spendable money do I have? Technically zero. And once again, that just helps reinforce that I have goals that I'm saving money for. So at the bottom, then when it's negative, then I decide, you know, am I going to go into like a hardcore savings mode, or am I going to go into kind of like my savings light mode? So that's where it matters, you know, what are your wants versus needs? If my needs aren't covered, then I will say, okay, I'm going to do emergency savings mode, which for me meant I started walking to work instead of driving, potatoes, rice, and bananas, essentially. I skipped Thanksgiving with my family that first year. So really, you get to decide how extreme you want to go for each of your, you know, different modes that you have for your finances. And that's just how I would indicate it. So when I was actually going through and filling this out, when I was broke, so I had $200 in my checking, and I decided that I wanted to have a $950 death fund. So this negative meant, okay, I need to go into my emergency savings mode because these are my needs. This is the money that I need to have in my life. It's not, you know, it's not a want. So then I said, okay, I actually truly have $200 in my debt fund. So then the next month, and I don't have, that compute, it was several computers ago. So unfortunately I don't have my actual spreadsheet to show you. But maybe the next month I came in after I got employed, and maybe I had $800. My death fund goal per my notes was $950. And so then I was $150 short of my goal. So then I would, like I said, we're trying to get to zero. So I would go back through and say, okay, I actually have $800 in my death fund, which got me to zero at the bottom. And then maybe the next month I had $1,200. My death fund is supposed to be $950. So I filled that in. And then in October, I would have had a positive $250, which yay. And then at that point, I moved on to a job loss fund. So I said $250 goes there, and we're down to zero. Okay, how's that sitting? Is that we're working through that okay? Um, and I did not budget at all through filling out my emergency fund or paying off debts. This was the only thing that I did for managing my money. And I say that because, I definitely did other things like working on increasing my income and really focusing just on day-to-day actions of just being as frugal as I could when I was in those like emergency savings mode. Um, at this point, when I had like $250 above, that was when I stopped my emergency spending mode and went into like savings light. Um, and then I realized I wanted to add more emergency funds. If you want to always have $950, you actually have to have more than $950. So that's when I started saving these other types of funds. Okay, why don't we go ahead and do work session 2? If you guys want to go ahead and fill out in more detail your cash management tracker. And the official prompt is separating what your cash needs are versus what your goals are, what things you want to be saving for. Okay, I will go ahead, turn these on, and let's go ahead and start the timer. It'll be, if you have hopped on during this session, this is going to be a 5-minute silent work session. Feel free to work on whatever you need to work on for your finances. And I just went through the prompt for filling out the cash tracker. All right, let's get into it. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, end of work session 2. How did it go? Let me turn off my banners here. So Icarus says, let's see. Oh, let me pull that up here. Yes, you'll need to be extreme at first and then reduce the effort because it'll be automatic and financial muscles begin to show. I love that. Yes, financial muscles begin to show. Absolutely. And you really start to get momentum with your finances. I think that's another good reason to separate out your emergency funds, because if you have, little amounts that you're saving for, you get to kind of like have little wins along the way. Like, oh, okay, I finally filled my common shortage fund. And then you get to kind of celebrate. And then that helps you, flex your financial muscles and just makes it a little easier down the road to save a little more. Increasing income helps increase saving without increasing savings rates, especially passive incomes like blog and YouTube. So increasing income helps increase savings. I think increasing income does increase your savings rate. Do you mean without increasing spending? Increasing income. Oh, if you increase your spending at the same time too. I think I know what you mean, especially passive income. Anything that you can do to make more money is going to help the situation. And so, like I said, this cash management tracker is the one thing that I did to like manage our money. But that was when I was going to school. So I was trying to increase my income through education. I didn't know anything about passive income at the time. Wish I could have started learning about blogging and YouTubing back in the day. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and then just focusing really, like I said, just spending more attention on what you're doing with your actual day-to-day spending and habits. This tracker will tell you, do I need to be saving hardcore or do I need to be saving softcore? And then deciding, translating that into your day-to-day life. It's really the trigger to know how aggressively do I need to be saving money right now in order to have the money for the things that I want and need to have. So I did want to mention, if you have credit cards, but you pay them off in full each month, I would include a row up here for credit cards, and then just have a negative amount be over here. So let's say you have $3,000 in your checking, but if you are paying off your credit cards in full each month, you would want to have that accounted for on the spreadsheet, because it's essentially netting out of your cash if you're paying it in full each month. If you are not paying it off in full each month, like if you have credit card debt and you're working on paying that off, I wouldn't include it on here. I would definitely include it on your budget, because having that, it should be covered by your income, not necessarily past money that you've saved. And like I said, with the cash management tracker, it's saying, here's the money I've saved previously, here's the money I have, and then what's the purpose for that money. That's another reason why having the 1 month ahead column is really helpful, because this accounts for, at no point in the month am I ever going to be short on my monthly expenses, as long as I'm have that money set aside, essentially. And it can be in your checking, just as long as you have the money. And then it just becomes an issue of, okay, where is the money? Do I need to transfer it from savings to checking? That kind of thing. Also, I've seen a lot of people start to account for cash before they've actually received it. So I never count any money as my money until it's in my account. So this includes like reimbursements from your employer. This includes bonuses. I never account for a bonus until it's actually in there. So you want to make sure that you're not counting on money that then doesn't come in. That can wreak havoc on your savings, because then you think that you have more spendable money than you really do. Icarus says, I did save 50% at first. It was hard it was hard times because I didn't budget at first. I think that a lot of people, budgeting is very helpful. And we have budgeted. I think budgeting is a very useful tool, especially if you have a partner, for communication. So deciding as a team how much money you're going to spend and who's going to spend it and where it's going to be spent. All those things are very helpful. We do not have credit card in my country. No one uses them. They use personal loans and get stuck in the bubble. Oh, interesting. No credit cards. We have some personal loans that happen here. But yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. Anyway, thank you for sharing. That is interesting. Okay, so I don't know. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of the hour, so I probably will skip the third silent work session. Sorry, I know I promised 3. But I did want to say, just to recap, that that one of the really helpful things about this is it teaches people to not trust their bank account balance. So what do I mean by that? I mean, a lot of people would look at their bank account in this example and say, oh, yay, I have $3,000 in my checking account. And so, in our brains, that's kind of interpreting it as saying, oh, I have $3,000 that I could spend. So what I did is, I had these amounts in here for how much money I need and want to have. I would pull this up and say, oh, okay, so this is $2,000, $950 plus $1,050. So I would say to myself, okay, 2,000 is the new zero. And that helped me create a habit of looking at my checking account, distrusting it, and saying, okay, whatever's in my account minus $2,000 gives me my actual spending money, spendable money. And so this really helped me because as I was building my emergency fund from like $200 to $12,000, I just always had that number in my mind so that I could quick do the math on how much money I actually could spend. Yeah, because I think people see that. I think that's why a lot of people say that they can't keep more than X dollars in their account or else they'll spend it, because they don't have this habit of distrusting that amount, and they don't have the habit of subtracting, the purpose of that money out. In this case, if I had $3,000, but I had emergency funds and goals worth $2,000. Then once again, it goes down to the spendable money where, okay, I actually could spend $1,000 if I wanted to. So I think that that's one of the really helpful things about this spreadsheet is it outlines what we're trying to do with our savings more so than just, having dollars here and there and not really having a purpose or reason why. Or maybe you have a reason, but maybe it's not as specific as it could be. So yeah, distrusting bank balance, 2,000 is the new zero. This, like I said, to make it simple, I just had one account. And so I could just take that one account balance, subtract off my 2,000 is the new zero, and not automatically, but easily know how much money I actually could spend. And then I just increased that threshold over time. So after I saved my death fund, then, I added maybe $1,000 here. And so then 3,000 is the new zero. So if I had 4,000 in my account, 3,000 is the new zero. I knew I only had spendable money of $1,000. And, that also simplified for me how frequently I had to manage my money, how frequently I had to, how much time it took me to do my finances. If you can just do this quarterly and then add up that amount so that you know what the new zero is, then you really don't have to update this, every single month, every single week, every single day. it is helpful to look at just to make sure that you don't have the wrong number in your mind. That happened to me a few times when we were buying our house, because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we have this minus this. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot we have that, like, we'd have like closing costs or whatever fees on top of what I was thinking was our emergency fund. So it is still helpful to look at on a regular basis, but really, once you get the hang of it, it is very easy to fill this out. A lot of the times it'll be like essentially the same as the month before. So, let's say we're going in September, we have $3,500. We just get that number from our checking account. Maybe we have $20 in our wallet and $100 in our savings account because our bank makes us have $100 in there, or else they charge us bank fees. Yeah, that happens to me. 950 death fund, 1,000 job loss fund, and 1050 for 1 month ahead. So really, you could potentially do this in about 10 minutes and say, oh, okay, I have $620 of spendable money. And that's really all you would need to do. Because of the 1 month ahead thing, that's, how you can get away without budgeting, which I know for some people is good news because some people hate budgeting. And that's why I, like I said, I never did a budget up until after the point we bought our house. Okay. Hopefully that helps. So I don't have credit card. Oh, you live in Morocco. Cool. I wanted to go there. That was our trip that we had planned before coronavirus happened, was going to Morocco. Thanks for your time. I'll ask a lot of questions. Profession my blog. Yeah, anytime. Okay, so a little bit about the book I'm reading right now, Quit Like a Millionaire. One of the tips I wanted to share is she talks in here about forced scarcity and how people talk about scarcity like it's a really bad thing. But really, her experience, Christy experiencing scarcity as a kid, it really helped her to save money and to become resourceful with like trying to save money instead of just relying on the easy out sometimes, which is just to spend money. So she talks about scarcity and how it isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I like that idea, and I thought that it went well with this because looking at your spendable amount and seeing it be zero kind of causes that like forced scarcity in our minds, like, oh, I need to save a lot more money in order to hit these goals. So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting point that she made, and thought it would be helpful. And then, so every time I like to ask, what was the most helpful takeaway from the session? If you have any other questions for Q&A. And then I did want to mention that I just did a blog collaboration with a bunch of my finance friends. I included the link in the description to my blog post, and that includes all of the links to everyone else's in the collaboration. The topic is how to wreck your budget. So kind of a little tweak on like typically how you save money and like how you budget, things to avoid essentially so that you don't wreck your budget. Okay, with that, if you guys don't have anything else, I'll go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much, you guys. I do hold this every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern, which is 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Love to see you back. It's always fun to chat with you guys. I appreciate your contribution. And with that, I'll let you go. Thank you guys so much. Bye.